It's not in the face! Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Hey, Not the Face with your host, John Nash, and your producer, me, Steffi Haynes. And today we have a bit of a hodgepodge episode, but mostly we're going to discuss the Battle of the Giants that occurred just this past Saturday night. In addition to that, we will talk a little bit about UFC, bare knuckle FC, and some boxing. But first, let's check in with John and see where we're at with Mom over in Minnesota.
It's going good. Weather is perfect out here in Minnesota. This is amazing weather, I got to say. I head back to LA at the end of the week, but I'm going to enjoy the last few days that I'm here with her and enjoying the weather. And that's about it. Not much else.
Well, we do know that your other lady, Little Miss Isla, is probably ready for you to come home.
Oh, yeah. I thought when you're going to the other lady, I didn't know where you're going with that one. But yes, I'm sure she misses me big time.
Oh, goodness gracious. All right. So on that fine note, we are going to jump right in here. Now, my first question is that we have a hearing for the UFC antitrust settlement happening like today. As you know, this day that we dropped the episode today, there is a hearing for the antitrust settlement. What is your prediction that's going to happen?
Well, considering we're recording this 2 days before, but we're going to take a guess on the day this comes out. A few hours after it comes out, there will be a hearing. My guess, and it's just I have to go with my guess, would have to be that the judge, Boulware, will approve this. Preliminary approve the settlement. Because that's the next step. Now that's not a guarantee. I think there's still a sizable chance, considering who the judge is and what he said before, that he maybe turns it down or kicks it back or suggests some other changes he would like to see. But based on the fact that he had four requests based on the transcript that came out from the previous hearing, where he discussed it, and his four things where he thought there was a conflict of interest between Johnson and Lee class. The Kung Lee class wanted monetary damages. Johnson wanted monetary and injunctive relief. They thought the settlement was probably too low for Lee, that he thought the settlement was probably way too low for Johnson because there was no settlement, and we had no discussion determination on the arbitration agreement for Johnson. So this settles three of those because it moves the Johnson class completely aside as its own case. So that three of the four are taken care of immediately. The Lee class also has additional money thrown in. So it's better than it was before because all the revenue is going to Lee and 40 million additionals thrown in. And also the plaintiffs have submitted a bunch of declarations. There was another group of declarations filed on Friday. That's 150, more than 150. They said there's more coming. So there's probably at least 200 declarations. So you're talking almost 20% of the fighters in the class have submitted declarations asking for the judge to approve the settlement. So based on all that, I would have to guess that the judge will preliminary approve the settlement and we'll move on to the next step to have some, where the fighters will have a chance to put their input and go over the other portions as the case moves forward. But who knows? There's a chance he rejects it. All
right. Let's get into some boxing. Oscar De La Hoya put out a really, really funny video. His clapback videos are comical. But anyways, he put one out where he clapped back at Devin Haney, in which he said the Haney-Garcia fight only sold 300,000 pay-per-views. Now, are you surprised by that amount? And does that mean that the event was a bomb?
Am I surprised it was that high or surprised it was that low? I guess I'm almost both, because I thought there was interest in Haney and Garcia. I think they are both kind of stars in boxing. They're not as big as Tank Davis, not as big as Canelo, but they are relatively well-known stars in American boxing. But I'm not completely surprised, because I think DAZN has proven to be a very difficult platform to sell pay-per-views in the U.S. I can't think of a single pay-per-view that's been a tremendous success for DAZN, right? Even the Canelo pay-per-view seemed to be much lower when he was on DAZN than they were with Showtime. And even the most recent Amazon one with Canelo seemed to do better than anything with DAZN. So DAZN is just, it doesn't have a footprint in the United States. It doesn't have wide reach, and it's just not a good platform, unfortunately, for the people that are there, to sell pay-per-views. The rest of the money they give boxers, great, but they're not good at getting reach. So I'm not shocked that it was only 300,000. I am, the one thing I will say, 300,000 based on the contract analysis we did, right? 300,000 would mean that he will have, Haney should have earned between 5 and 10 million on that bout, depending on what their sponsors international. But rough ballpark, 5 to 10 million, which is not bad for a boxer. For most combat sports, that's a great amount. But I think Haney, thinking how big the fight was, they expected, I know they were talking about, they expected like 30 million, 20 to 30 million to be his split, which it didn't come close to. So I would say from that point of view, it's a bomb. From the point of view, when you look at the contract and what the expenses were, it at least made some money.
Okay, now I got a side note here from Bill Haney that literally just happened about an hour ago now. He said, "Stop the bullshit, Oscar. Your clapback took a week and it's still broken. You answered no questions. Ryan said he paid $1.5 million for the weight issue, but we only got $600,000. Plus, Golden Boy received $1 million in damages, leaving $900,000 unaccounted for. If you want, I'll come over and pick up the $1.9 million right now. Fighters and fans deserve transparency. Settle this right away." So what do you make of Bill Haney saying all that?
Well, the problem is Haney comes across kind of as a whiner. That's the problem. That's the image he projects right now from when an image is, when the fans come up with how they imagine you, they put you in a persona and a character. Almost anything you do kind of fits it. So it's unfortunate because I think in many ways he's right here, because the part about his lawsuit that I really agree with, as we discussed earlier, is not about the failed drug test as much, that you could sue over that, because it's how do you sue over ostarine a small amount, and you kind of agree that's in the contract that they already had an agreement in place if you fail a drug test. So that part I couldn't understand, but they did have an agreement that all profits would be split. And so if Ryan is kicking back money to Golden Boy, well, that means the profit margins for Golden Boy went up. That those their net expenses lowered because they don't have to pay Ryan as much, and the amount that's left over in the net income has gone up. So I think he has a point that he deserves a cut of that.
Okay, all right. So let's move on to some more boxing. Now I'm going to preface this next question with something that you sent to me, and I want to read it. And it's Bob Arum was talking on Jared Anderson's loss to Martin Bakole. And I quote, "I want everybody to know that it wasn't us. His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh went right to the fighter and made this proposal for money that the fighter had never seen before, and picked as his opponent this Bakole, who is a tenacious puncher. He'd never fought a guy like that, so the fact that he got taken apart and knocked out was not surprising. Don't put it on my matchmakers. We were against that fight. When they wave money at these kids, they insist on taking it. We let that fight go ahead, and it was the stupidest fight that Jared could have taken." On the Big Fight Weekend podcast, Bob Arum also said that Riyadh season will not be having big fights outside Saudi Arabia and outside the Riyadh season going forward. Why is that, and what does that mean for boxing? And if you wouldn't mind just addressing what he said about Martin Bakole and Anderson.
Okay, well, I'll do the Martin Bakole thing first, because it's Jared Anderson was his boxer that lost.
Right.
But that kind of is a good example of the difference between boxing and MMA, because Bob Arum he's a promoter that has a vested interest in Jared Anderson. That's their boxer. Unlike the UFC and PFL, where they represent both sides and they don't have a stake in either guy. And they can throw young guys against killers. And they don't care if they get beat up, because whoever moves ahead, they control. So they win no matter what, because they own both the A and B side. in boxing, because there's, it's so splintered, and promoters often have to have co-promotions, and, titles are technically independent, although they do cheat under the table with the sanctioning organizations. But a promoter will tie themselves to a boxer. And with Jared Anderson, the promoter also, because they invest in the boxer, they will spend a long time developing him until he's ready to go on the next step, because you put all this money and you don't want to get his ass kicked and destroy the value built, also destroy his future potential earnings, because he might regress, because boxing is dangerous. If you lose and take a bad beating, you might never come back the same. And so Bob Arum has pointed out that, in our perfect world, we would have slow walked him more, got him on better fights, got him ready for a better boxer of that level. But with the Saudis just throwing so much money at guys, the boxers, like, I would love to make that much for one fight, which sounds great until you step in the ring with someone that's way above you and you're not yet at that level, potentially damaging his career. So I think Arum makes a good point. Now, about Riyadh season, the big thing is that the General Entertainment Authority, it sounds like, the money they're putting into Riyadh season in their mind, which is the government, the state himself, is this is supposed to be money to promote Riyadh season. And Turki Al-Sheikh has been using it to kind of build up this boxing enterprise idea he has. And so what they want, which again, from their point of view makes sense, we're paying this kind of money. We want the events only held during Riyadh season. Now, that's good for Riyadh season and the Saudis, but I don't think that's good for boxing, because it's good for the paychecks of the guys that fight during that time, but it's a limited, it's half the season, only Riyadh season, half the year. It's not, so a whole section of the year, a lot of boxers, especially non-American that don't have pay-per-view draw, are going to be waiting to have the big fights during Riyadh season. And if they're all held in Saudi Arabia, you've seen the audiences there. It's not like it's a hot audience. Mm-mm. These are people dying, big fans. And so you're holding it there. It's a terrible atmosphere in many ways. And I also worry, because we're holding events in Saudi Arabia on Saudi Arabia time for them. The promotion of the event, the interest is going to wane outside of Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. In fact, we've seen a lot of these big events Saudi hold. They do pretty good in UK. It's closer time zone, but there is like no American presence. When Crawford fought in Los Angeles, it was underwhelming how much interest there was in America. Ngannou was done during the daytime on a weekday here in America against Joshua. There was no interest. So I do worry that they're putting all these, they're going to take all this money and they're going to say, we are not going to let these events be held outside the U.S. where the fans actually are, and it could raise more interest and actually promote the bigger events. We're going to only have them during this limited window. We're only going to have them in Saudi Arabia. And we are not, and the fan base that's much stronger in other parts of the world is going to be denied the bigger fights because of that. I don't think that's good.
Okay, quick question.
Fire away.
This promotion that Turki Al-Sheikh is doing, you painted it a little bit different than what Riyadh season the authority wants. You said that he was kind of doing something a little different than what their goal was by going outside of the Riyadh season proper. So I want to ask you about what they think about him trying to make all these deals to basically monopolize boxing as whole, like trying to make big financial deals with the other promotions, with Matchroom, with Golden Boy, with Frank Warren's, Queensberry, everything. So could you just weigh in on that really quick while we're here?
Well, yeah, that's an interesting part, because it's still up in the air. I'll have to wait for more evidence to see what the input, what the effect is on the boxing side, the Riyadh season boxing promotion that he is kind of running. But, if it only is in Saudi Arabia all the time, that might put a damper in the idea that you're going to have all these promotions working for it, right? Because one of the appeals was, and maybe that's the reason Bob Arum doesn't seem so enthusiastic about it anymore, because you're basically, if you're only going to have it in Saudi Arabia, you're abandoning the American market. And the American market's huge, right? The American market's where you can do massive pay-per-views. Amazon has not, and PBC has not signed on at all. And so my guess is that his plan, it sounded like a little while ago, just a few months ago, it sounded like Turki Al-Sheikh's plan was to get all these promotions to work together and have Riyadh season in Riyadh, but also do events around America, around the world, America and Germany and England, these big events, the Joshua events. Recently was a massive event there, and build it up as just this massive league, in air quotes there, that would dominate boxing. But if Riyadh season, if the Saudi government's telling him, listen, this huge amount of money that we're signing over is only good when it's held in Saudi Arabia, that sounds like it would be the death knell to his plan. I don't know how it works. I mean, maybe it still works a little bit, but I don't know how you get everybody to come to Saudi Arabia for 6 months, whatever, 4 to 5 months a year that Riyadh season is, to only fight then for the big fights. And then send them back to the UK or America, where they don't really have a fan base anymore because they've been fighting only in Saudi Arabia, and to fight outside of that season, and then come back next year for another fight. I just don't see how that kind of works the way this big tournament system that he apparently was proposing.
That's got to also affect the bookmakers too, your DraftKings and all those places that accept bets. I mean, if nobody's watching, who's going to be placing all those big bets again? To access the bonus content of this episode, you must be a paid subscriber. To do that, go to heynottheface.substack.com and subscribe today.
Not in the face! Thank you.